We are just waiting, holding on for a couple of minutes for people to join. And meanwhile, we guys are live now. So welcome, Aishwarya. Welcome, Dhruv, to this webinar today.
Thanks, Yogesh.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Ash.
Randy. Thank you. Good.
Let's just wait for a couple of minutes and let people join in, and then we can go ahead in full swing about our discussion about cookies today. I think Dhruv, Aishwarya, we can start the conversation now. 5 minutes over, and let's go ahead and let's see how can we deep dive into the world of cookies today. Not the ones that we eat, the ones that we have on our websites. Welcome Dhruv, welcome Aishwarya. For our audience, welcome to you guys as well to this informative webinar session about the compliance with cookie consents under the global privacy regulations. Now, today we have two key speakers with us. We have Dhruv Suri, partner at PSA Legal, and we have Aishwarya Kumar. She's the legal counsel at GoTrust. So, Dhruv, Aishwarya, I hand over the stage to you for a quick introduction to you guys.
Thanks, Yogesh. Guys, my name is Dhruv. I've been a tech privacy lawyer now for much longer than I can remember. I've had the chance to work in the privacy domain now for a number of years, and it's a very exciting space. Not only do you get to learn very interesting things about the business of your clients, because there's data involved, there's also a very interesting crossroads with law and policy that you get to involve yourself with. So thanks for having me here, Yogesh.
Thanks, Dhruv. Thank you for coming in. Aishwarya?
Yes, thank you, Yogesh, for giving me this opportunity to introduce myself. So I'm Aishwarya, and currently I'm looking after the legal privacy compliance of the GoTrust tool. And yeah, it's amazing to be here and share my insights that how GoTrust is going to solve the problems of the cookie consent management today. So thank you so much for joining today.
Great, great. Thank you guys for joining in. Thank you for this time because I think taking out 30 or 45 minutes of your time on a Friday is really, really hard for everybody. You have to wrap up for the weekend. So thank you so much for coming in today. And thank you, audience, for joining in for this informative session. Let's go ahead. I think the first and the foremost thing for most of the audience is what are cookies? I mean, in my own understanding, whenever I go to a website, this is the first thing that I'm asked for. Do you accept the cookies or not? And I think that is the same for you, Dhruv, as well, right? Being in tech privacy space, you must be deep diving into it and trying to understand what are these things exactly. So if you can just educate the audience a bit about how you perceive cookies and what are the effect of these cookies for different people.
Sure, Yogesh. So let me actually try and break it down in a very simple manner, right?
Yeah.
So cookies are essentially nothing but small text files that websites place on your device when you're browsing. That's a very short summary of it. But let's also try and think of it a little practically, right? So when a person uses a browser to visit a website, the browser sends a request to the website server for the page you want to view, right? So if you're using a Google Chrome and you go on a LinkedIn, so Google Chrome is essentially sending a request to the website that you're trying to view. And then the website server includes a set of key headers in its response, which instructs your browser to store this cookie commonly, which is known as the HTTP cookie, right? So I'm talking about a very simple website HTTP cookie. So
Yeah.
this is really how cookies operate, right? So this is the communication, and once this cookie is stored on your browser, it can essentially either track your activity, and cookies are of different kinds, and we'll talk about it. But it can essentially track your activity, and some of these cookies are also essential for the website in itself to operate, which are essentially known as your essential cookies, right? Because you have to consent to those essential cookies to be able to browse and use that website. Have those, and then you have cookies on top of that which will essentially track your activity. You'll have third party cookies which will come from third party sources to be able to track your entire activity on the internet. So again, different cookies, different functions. And if you look at the kind of data these cookies are capable of collecting, and this data clubbed with multiple other factors of your internet profile can then easily identify you.
Great. I think you actually explained it end to end. Aishwarya, do you want to add something to it in terms of the conversation?
Yes, Dhruv has explained it very well actually. So it doesn't require any further explanation. But adding to that, what he has said, like basically in simpler words, it is like suppose there is a customer who has visited your website, and now he is again visiting your website. So he will get the same kind of preferences and same kind of customization which he has selected earlier. So cookies basically do that. So they record your data when you consent to it. So that's why they have to ask whether they want to consent to it, whether you want to consent to it, or whether you want to reject the cookies, so that they can collect the data and they can show the products as per your preferences and choices. So this actually helps in the personalization and customization as well. So that's why the organization are using cookies these days, and the regulations have come up so that the more regulations can be made on the cookies. So yeah, that's pretty much
Thanks, Aishwarya, for the insights on this bit. And I think I am an engineer from my own background, and I understand these things. But it would have been really insightful for a lot of our viewers today. And the next key point I would like to discuss over here is the importance of these cookie consents for the organizations right now. Like, why is it necessary for an organization to collect cookie consent? Because in terms of a piece of code or a file that has been stored into your system, how is it able to identify you as a person? How it comes becomes a PII or personal identifiable information, and why we need it? Right? I think Dhruv, being involved in tech privacy space for like almost 10 years now, he can
Don't
actually.
disclose my age.
I will not. I will not from now onwards. So you will be able to actually give us a bit of insights of why companies need to actually follow this, taking consent about around cookies.
See, like we spoke about this earlier, right? What
Yeah.
cookies are capable of doing, they are capable of tracking your activity on the internet. They're capable of storing information that is associated with your browsing activity. So simple things like when you go on a website and you are typing, you're putting a search command, the next time it will try and autofill for you because that website has stored that information of your browsing history in a cookie. And next time when that same website opens, the cookie comes back onto that website from your browser and is now able to try and determine what you were willing to type, right? So like the autofill feature, the passwords that get saved on your website, the username that gets saved when you go back to our website. The functionality of all of this at the background is through cookies.
Yeah.
Targeted advertising is of course a big piece of it, and which is where the regulation around cookies and the fact that there could potentially be PII associated with it. Because when you think of cookies in isolation, right, when you just simply think that look, you're going on a website and that website is tracking your IP address, it is tracking your user activity, what buttons are you clicking on, that in itself you wonder like where is the PII element in this?
Hmm.
Why should this be regulated from a privacy angle as far as personal information is concerned, right?
Right.
But when you are able to sort of put multiple sort of trackers together, and which is what a lot of these companies do that track your advertise that push targeted ads to you, right? They're able to track your internet behavior, and for them to be able to figure out what website are you spending more time on, what are the kind of videos that you're saving, that you're watching, what are the kind of products that you're shopping, and through all of that, when a lot of this data, like they'll have your address when you have to order something, they'll be able to track your like I said, username, password is one piece. A username typically will have a name associated with it, and
Right.
through that, right, so through that, when you put together multiple data points, they'll be able to actually in more often than not, they'll be able to track your identity, or identify you. And in fact, it's a very funny thing. We were having this conversation some time back with a client, and the client actually sent us this report because this conversation came up where are cookies actually a privacy concern? And this
Right.
report was published by one of these big fours, which said that almost 1,000 plus e-commerce platforms had been interviewed by them, and about 70 odd percent of them said that cookie tracking is a big privacy concern when they look at it objectively as what it's capable of doing. It's a different thing that report also said that close to about 60% people are actually happy that this data is collected and targeted things are thrown at them on the internet. But notwithstanding that, the fact is that even from an industry perspective, they realize how a lot of these data points put together can actually generate PII and then use for targeted advertising.
Oh, that's really, really insightful, Dhruv. And it opens up a different direction for a lot of us to think that when we are consenting to these cookies blindly, like, are we doing it right or wrong? Because it can be utilized in multiple ways right now, at least without DPDPA in picture in India right now. So, Aishwarya, do you want to add something to this conversation according to your own opinion?
Yeah, sure. Like Dhruv was talking about a document, and I actually went through the document. So, it was published by the PwC. So, they had actually outlined a lot of information about the cookies and how the users are getting influenced by it. Even through my personal experience, I'm saying, like before a year ago, I was also whenever I used to visit a website. I was shown that accept all cookies, reject all cookies. So I was not aware what is it all about. And randomly I used to accept those because I was in a hurry that I have to use this website. So I used to accept it. Also, I was not aware that how is it being used in an improper way, how it can be used in an improper way. So since the privacy regulations have come up, so the users are getting more informed that how their PIIs will be getting collected. So that's a great insight from Dhruv, and yeah, that's pretty much from my side,
Thanks,
from my
Aishwarya.
experience as well.
Thank you, Aishwarya. So, before moving forward from this slide, I think there is one thing that was really intriguing me, and I think we have two lawyers here, and there's no one better to answer the coming question: that how the law perceives it, how these privacy laws like GDPR, PIPDA, CCPA, or even our DPDPA bill, how they're perceiving cookie consent. Like, is there something that is very specific written around it in the law, or how it is perceived? I think I give the stage to Dhruv to start the discussion further.
Uh, okay, so this is with a caveat that I don't know about a lot of jurisdictions, but I'll try and address this from whatever little I know. Uh, GDPR actually, more before GDPR, Europe actually recognized this aspect around cookies much, uh, way before a lot of other countries did. So, sometime in 2002, they came out with a directive which effectively
Yeah,
said
the EP basically matters.
cookies are,
Yeah.
how granular cookie consent needs to be taken. And I think a lot of these principles also reflect in GDPR, right? In terms of the free consent requirement. And, um, while even I don't think GDPR also very specifically talks about regulating, there's no specific provision that is talking about. Um, Cookies in specific, but in terms of the kind of consent you specifically need for them. But I think the granularity of that essentially is triggering from the 2002 directive, and that is something that now GDPR is ensuring is very systematically followed across Europe. So, I mean, there are multiple precedents rather, where penalties have been imposed on companies in different states across Europe, where either they packed multiple consents under one banner, and you either had to accept it or reject it, right? And they said that's not going to be acceptable. There were also instances where they said, look, if you don't want cookies to be, if you want to refuse cookie consent, then you have to pay. So it's either you accept it or you pay and become a paid subscriber, and then we will not have cookies installed to be able to track your activity. So a lot of this has actually been adjudicated quite extensively in multiple countries in Europe. And I know for a fact that even jurisdictions like the UK, like Luxembourg, they all provide for very specific aspects around how granular the cookie consent has to be. As far as India is concerned, we've not specifically touched upon cookies even under our Information Technology Act. We've not specifically touched upon cookies even under our DPDPA. But if you really sort of look at the law, right? If you look at I mean, if you look at our the Information Technology Reasonable Security Practices Rule, or the SPDI rules that we commonly refer to them as, right? They
Right.
say that if there is any sensitive information that you are collecting, you have to take specific consent. And that specific and that sensitive information includes information like passwords. It includes financial data, and often these cookies are responsible for like storing passwords on a website. When you log in and your password is already there, and so you could argue that in some sense India was already providing for how cookies had to be regulated, and you had to take express consent from anybody before you could before you could essentially before they could start using a website and cookies were getting installed on their system. You had to take specific consent from them. Of course, the difference is that under uh, the IT Act regime, the practice has of course been to have a very detailed privacy policy and put the language somewhere over there, which often people don't read. And the difference is going to be, if you look at our learnings from GDPR, if you look at what the EU directive has said and how a lot of the precedents have come up in these jurisdictions. Um, I would imagine that going forward, as far as cookie consent is, from an Indian context, as far as cookie consent goes, you will see a lot of granularity coming in, even in the Indian context, to be able to say that we are going to collect, these are essential cookies which you have to say yes to. And if you don't, then obviously your experience to use the website will be disrupted. But as far as the other cookies are concerned, people will start mentioning that these are cookies to track you. These are cookies for the purposes of advertising. These are cookies for whatever else other purpose. And then you'll have the option to say yes, no. And maybe if some website wants to offer a paid subscription and say that, if you can pay, but it's got to give you that option to say no, that I don't want you to collect this data, or and we still be able to use that website.
True, true. I think in like I'm not talking in terms of the law, but as a user, if I have to perceive it, I would be rather happy to pay for it because I'm using YouTube right now with ads free. Like it's a pain point for me. Whoever sees it as a pain point would be more than happy to be paying for it or taking some one method or other to approach this whole situation altogether. Uh, apart from that, I think Ishwar.
Let me also clarify on that, Yogesh.
Huh.
As far as YouTube is concerned, right? Like having a paid subscription to not get ads is also slightly different from getting a paid subscription to not actually have cookies being run on your system, as far as that website is concerned, right? So you can. So I think we also need to remember that just because it's a paid subscription doesn't mean there are no cookies, right?
Right, right, right.
So, like your behavior in terms of what videos you're watching um, could still be tracked, because even though you're paying a subscription fee, because that subscription fee is to get ad-free content, it's
Right,
not to not get tracked. And I
right.
think that understanding has to be very start thinking that just because there's a paid subscription means that there is no tracking happening. And therefore, even from a user's perspective, when you think of it from a data principles perspective, right? Like, for example, when you go on
Yeah.
YouTube, I think it's important for you, and therefore the onus is actually on YouTube to ensure that the cookie framework, the cookie consent box that's going to pop up, has to be super easy to explain. A lot of people start naming cookies over there. Who knows? I mean, nobody understands cookie from its name. There are such
Right.
complicated names given to cookies that doesn't solve the purpose. So some very simple explanation of what that cookie does and to be able to say that, look, and a lot of people also, and this is another GDPR issue that's come up. A lot of it is already pre-checked, right? So it's a form of a dark pattern if you think about it. So they'll say, yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah, you're consenting, and then you have to formally, you have to take that affirmative step to actually deselect that option. And I think a lot of those practices, dark patterns read with how the whole consent framework around cookies needs to work. I think people, like companies, have to ensure that it's easily understood by individuals like you and me. And
Yeah.
individuals also need to be sensitized to know and to understand that what this cookie consent actually means. And if you click on accept all, what are you agreeing to? And I think this goes back to the first point that we started this conversation with, that a lot
Yeah.
of people actually don't know what it means.
True. That's true. That's really true, Dhruv. And I think that is the right direction to proceed in terms of this conversation. Aishwarya, do you want to add something to this?
Yes, so we were talking about YouTube, right? So I'm just giving an example of some of the music platforms that we use. For example, let's suppose there's Spotify. So when we use the paid subscription of Spotify, then also you can see that Spotify starts recommending you the same kind of songs which you are accustomed to listen to. So actually, Dhruv was right when he said that just because you have paid money and you are enjoying ad-free music doesn't mean that you will be not getting the yeah, like your personal data is not getting collected. That is not the surety from the website. So the
True.
users need to be aware of that. And regarding the laws, actually we are eagerly waiting for the DPDP rules to come out because in section 6 of the DPA, like the DPDPA, it is mentioned that the consent from the users should be informed, unambiguous, and other essentials are mentioned. That and an assertive action should be there, like the and affirmative action should be there from the side of the users. So it actually mentions that whenever the users are giving consent, so it should be like something where they know actually that where their data is getting used. So it should be very clear and it should be in a very simple language. So this is also one of the issue that we are facing right now, that the language is not very clear on the website. So we are eagerly waiting for the rules to come out so that I think that it will generally comply with the EU directive as well as the GDPR, which we already talked about. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Aishwarya, for your understanding. As I think we can move ahead in the conversation now, and I would love to understand one more thing. We talked about cookie consent, how it's important for the user, but we haven't really talked about how taking cookie consent in the right manner is advantageous for a company as such. Like, what are the safeguards that they can get by taking the right consents for the cookies that they are getting, that they are storing in a user's device, maybe a mobile phone or the or the laptops. So, any insights on that, Dhruv, from your end? Have you?
I mean, look, at the end of the day, honestly, and I let me rephrase your question,
Yeah.
um, which is that how do companies benefit from ensuring that they collect cookies in the right manner?
Right.
I mean, have I understood it correctly, or was there another angle
I
to it?
mean, the question, just a one word that has to be added, that they are collecting the consent for the cookies that they're storing in the user's mobile phone or application in the right manner. The consents that they're collecting for these cookies, basically. That's what I was asking.
Yeah, and I mean, the minute you start doing that, uh, and if you speak to companies, their biggest challenge is that we don't want to spoil user experience. Like we don't want to, like it shouldn't be where somebody comes on our platform and they see like this really complex looking box and they don't understand, because mind you, it has to be informed consent, right? So the onus on establishing consent as being informed is also very, very important as consent actually being given.
True.
And a lot of people will just come because there's a complex looking box and they're like, accept all, I don't care, move on. Right. And
Right.
as a company, you're very happy because you're like, I got my consent. I made sure that I am in the right as far as the law is concerned. But now it's debatable whether it was actually informed consent or not. So one is to not just ensure that you have collected consent for whatever for whatever cookies that are involved. It is critical to ensure that you have taken consent in a manner where you have done everything in your capacity to ensure that the user has understood what he or she has given the consent for. Right? So now let's assume that the companies are doing that. They are collecting consent in the manner that they have to ensure that even the user has understood what consent is being given for. Then what is the advantage, right? Like, then how do companies stand to benefit from that? And I think the biggest advantage is that they will not be liable in any manner, because they would have collected consent properly, and for all of that PII to be processed. There are other factors also, right? So one is you collect that you've taken consent in the right manner, and you also then have a shelf life for cookies. Just because if someone stopped coming on your website, how long do you store those cookies for?
Right.
So there's a lot more you have to do. It's just not at a consent level, right? So if I have stopped using LinkedIn for 6 months or 8 months or 10 months or 12 months, can LinkedIn endlessly store those cookies which have my data, even though I have consented? Or from the last login, there has to be some stipulated time period after which they have to mandatorily delete it. Because bear in mind, there are data minimization principles also we have to apply. There are
Correct.
other principles that will trigger to ensure that only data that is relevant for the purposes of processing is collected, and it's used only for the time that you need it for. You don't keep it for storing is processing. So you don't store it for beyond the time period that you actually need it for. So I think if today we are saying that companies comply with consent and companies comply with the overall spirit of the law, the biggest advantage is that they will save themselves from liability, because under the DPDPA especially, right, if you have not taken consent properly and you're processing personal data without taking consent, there are penalties associated with that.
Yeah.
I think the interesting part in the Indian context is going to be this, that how and when will people find out that their data is, like, you get targeted ads, but how many people will then make the effort to actually report it and hold companies accountable? So that's a different piece altogether. But I do think that if companies follow this, it's a great practice to follow, and they will see that instances, even where you have sort of bad players in the market, right? And that always happens in India, where somebody or the other, just to take you, to harass you, to bother you, will file a complaint with the data protection board and let them know that they did not give consent. Let them know that there are tracking cookies on your website, even though every time you had to accept cookies, you refused consent specifically. Yet there are tracking cookies on your system, right? So somebody or the other will come and take some company to court and try and in some manner extort money, and that's a different argument I'll come to, because I have a theory on that as far as the DPDPA is concerned, because we have a mediation clause, and I just think mediation has the potential to become something where people who drag companies to court will end up getting settlements. But outside of that discussion, I do think that companies will be able to really save themselves from big liability if they can show that they followed this process in a very transparent manner. So I do think it's a great best practice, and it saves you money.
I think I can already see how, on what topic I can do the next webinar with you. So the branch that we are going to, the mediation bits and the DSR bits, the subject requests that people will be filing eventually on the basis of these consents, is ultimately that's the use, right? That's why we are collecting the consent, because somebody is going to exercise their rights at the end of the day. And in terms of this, I think the most uh, right thing to now understand is how the companies are based, like what are the major pitfalls that companies have seen in the past that cause them fines or cause them issues because they have not taken the right consents or the right cookie consents. Like Can you add a bit to this, Dhruv, as well in this conversation?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so I'll give you a few examples. Okay, so for example, there was in Finland, there was a case where the cookie banner had only two options. It said when you had to accept, you either had to click OK to move forward, or you could click on additional information, right? So then it gave you like this complicated information about what cookie was getting installed, what that cookie would do, what all data would get collected in the process, etc., etc. And it would directly, I mean, as part of that additional information, it would just take you to the company's privacy policy, which had again a lot of legal jargons detailed over there. And the Finnish Data Protection Authority essentially held that this consent will not be considered voluntary because the user was not given the right to refuse storage of the cookies.
Right.
And therefore, they ordered that there must be a change in the banner to explicitly include a refusal for storage of cookies option, and also give the consumer a easier way to withdraw that consent as well. Because today I may agree, and tomorrow that right to withdraw any kind of consent, obviously DPDP also requires that, has to be there. And similar cases, for example, uh, I think the big one that is there is that we must have all heard about was the most recent one, no, which was the LinkedIn case. That is, I think, earlier this year only, where somebody essentially said that he visited multiple websites and refused on the cookie banner every time, said like no cookies to be installed, and refused consent on every single occasion, and at some point of time found out that there were tracking cookies present on his laptop, and the controllers for these cookies were different LinkedIn and Microsoft entities, and he hired some sort of an independent analyst to view this data, and he found out that 30 websites that he visited, 27 of them had deposited cookies on his laptop, even though he expressly said no, right?
Hmm.
And the reason why this is important is, I'll tell you, because most people don't understand cookies, right? They think it's a very technical concept. So the fact that
Right.
cookies are installed, like how many of us are actually going to bother to go give our laptop to someone and say, check whether there are cookies installed, right? You won't come across people doing that. So this person did
Oh,
this, and
yeah.
and and realized that despite saying no to almost 30 odd websites, 27 of them had installed cookies on his laptop. And obviously then the authorities said that this is a clear violation of GDPR, and there was I'm forgetting the quantum, but there was some then penalty imposed on these companies, and obviously they were also asked to pay for the data subject, in that case, the
Right.
individual, his legal costs.
No, that's pretty interesting, Dhruv, to learn that how not navigating the consent processes for cookies can cause such a damage to an organization in terms of the trust and in terms of monetary value as well. I think Aishwarya here from the GoTrust team can help us understand how their tool is catering it uh, currently. Aishwarya, do you have any insights for us on this?
Yes, I'm sure, Yogesh. So, first of all, I would like to give an overview of the GoTrust cookie consent management, like how it works basically. So, as we had a number of discussion that how laws are coming up and how it regulates the cookie consent management. So, we are already providing the solution to the enterprises. First of all, we are as written that we are an enterprise level solution, which means that the tool is capable of handling n number of visitors and thousand number of websites. So we a lot of a million of visitors can visit, and the website doesn't go slow down. So this is one of the essential key features that our tool has. Secondly, we also have customized consent banners. So what it means is that we are fully customized. We provide fully customizable consent banners, and according to the brand identity of the organization. In they can just customize the banners according to their preferences, and our scanning technology, the technology we use, is capable of detecting and monitoring all cookies on the websites in real time. Also, we have the granular consent management. So we were talking about the laws. So I would like to reiterate the laws as well. So Article 7 of the GDPR also talks about the specific consent requirements and the explicit consent requirements, right?
Right.
So it also shows that the pre-ticked boxes shouldn't be there. You just don't have to force your like you don't have to force your consent. It should be specifically mentioned that for what all purposes you are giving your consent. There should be analytics for the marketing purposes, for the analytics for the function cookies, and the essential cookies are exceptions. So we have all the consent in the form in the granular form, and that is why we are adhering to all the global compliances. And you can move ahead with the next slide. So this is all about the feature or key feature of the GoTrust tool.
Got it, got it. Thanks, Ashwarya, for helping us understand. I think, Dhruv, all the key things we discussed, go trust somehow, in terms of the features or the way that they are approaching consent is doing it right. Like I think I know other market tools as well that are approaching it, and GoTrust is approaching it in the similar manner as well. Do you have any comment on this, Dhruv? Do you want to say something, or do you want to add on to something over here?
No, look, I fully agree, and I've had a chance to take a demo of the product as well, and I'm
Okay.
overall quite happy, and I was with how it's managing consent. It's a very critical tool and a feature that needs to be considered by companies in India, given consent is a very important basis of processing, unlike in EU, where you have other bases of processing data as well. Consent is a very big thing in India, and I think a lot of companies will realize that privacy compliance going forward, at least 80-90%, has to get productized. It's not something that can manually happen. It's not something that you need like a team of 100 people to manage. You need to ensure that you've adopted the right tools, and most certainly, and I think it's just not a feature, but I think the principles with which some of the features have been built in, right? So what Aishwarya was just talking about, it should not be pre-checked. The consent should not be pre-checked. There are precedents on exactly this very point, even under GDPR, where where you have where you are giving consent uh, uh, for cookies, and that is already pre-checked. And courts have said that even under GDPR, for example, when you give consent, there has to be an affirmative act. And courts have said that merely deselecting is not an affirmative act, right? So I
Exactly.
think that's a so it's good that GoTrust is also approaching the features on its tool, not just in terms of what is strictly required as per the DPDPA, but also what is required, keeping in mind the letter and spirit of the law.
That's that's really. I think Ashwarya should take it as a compliment from Dhruv altogether, because I think in terms of the whole privacy domain, technology is we should like technologies should be at the forefront, because manually doing these processes will be a nightmare for anybody, right? Eventually, and managing customers' consents, maybe eventually the other parts of the privacy domain altogether. Aishwarya, would you like to tell us a bit more about GoTrust?
Yeah, sure, Yogesh. Exactly, you pointed out a very interesting thing that the intermingling of law and technology is the need of the hour. And that's what we are doing here. And that's why the issues have come across regarding the privacy laws and privacy issues. So, going ahead with the key features, so we also provide the GoTrust tool, also provides a comprehensive dashboard. So what does it mean basically? I would like to explain it a bit further. So this like how we manage our consent analytics. We can do it through the consent dashboard, so that the so that the companies or the websites can manage the cookie inventories and generate compliance reports with just a few clicks. So the manual work is reduced basically, and everything can happen on your fingertips. So this is what the comprehensive dashboard does for you. Secondly, we also have the intelligent cookie classification, which means that the GoTrust is designed in a way that it has AI-powered solution where it automatically categorizes the cookie based on their purposes and based on their geographies, basically geo or industry, you can say. So it is reducing the manual work, and everything can happen as per the automations. So, and it actually adheres to the accurate classification requirements as well. So that this intelligent cookie classification thing, it basically updates the website that how the new cookies are detected. Whenever some new cookies are detected, it will automatically create a trigger to the website. So this is what this intelligent cookie classification is all about. Now, also that last but not the least, we have n number of future features. So the last one that I would be from a legal perspective, I think, which is very important, is adhering to the global privacy laws, which our tool does. So the solution is designed to meet the requirements across global privacy regulations. For example, the GDPR, the CCPA requirements, and the DPDP as well, because I'm sure that the rules that are yet to come should be comprehensive about this aspect, the cookie aspect, and the LGBT as well. So the platform automatically adjusts itself to the different jurisdictional requirements, different laws and regulations. So this is one of the basic features, like one of the essential feature that the organization can use to avoid the fines and penalties in future, and they can actually save crores of rupees because the penalty is around 250 crores, if I'm not wrong, 250 or more. So they can avoid that by
Got
adhering to these compliances.
Got it. Got it. Thank you so much, Aishwarya, for the insights on the CodeTrust tool. And I think just to sum up the whole conversation, we today learned a lot about what cookies are exactly. That would have been really informative for a lot of our clientele, a lot of our joinees actually in the webinar today, because obviously cookies has been a myth for most of the people. We just do accept all and move on. But thanks, Dhruv, for putting the light on what cookies are, how they're categorized, and what exact function do they serve on the websites and the mobile applications. And thanks, Aishwarya, for helping us understand how the tool helps the whole process at the end of the day. So thank you so much, guys, and thank you all the viewers today for attending this webinar. It was great having both of you and all of you listening to this. Have a good
Thanks,
day.
thanks for having us, Yogesh. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you for
you.
having me. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Aishwarya. Thanks. Thank you.